Yay!
We saw the movie Judy, stars Renée Zellweger as Judy Garland, whose life was full of trauma, abuse, mental illness, addiction, big star. And this movie in particular hones in on the years right before she dies and focuses on that, and then throws in some flashbacks to her childhood right around the time of The Wizard of Oz.
Right.
And so there you go. Kelsey, go wait or skip.
I'm going to say skip this movie. I feel like the only valuable content that I got from the movie was information about Judy Garland. But I feel like you could just Google search Judy Garland and read about it quickly and not have to sit through a movie. Moreover, I think that a lot of the things in the movie I found problematic. And we'll get into them when we get into our talks.
I'm also going to say skip. So, like Kelsey said, I felt like I could have just read Judy Garland's wiki page and I would have been, like, done. Actually, I probably would have gotten a lot more information, including, like, I guess...
how she died.
Right, I had to ask, like, how she died later. It just said, you know, at the end of the movie, she died. The movie, I found it to be pretty dull. And I was kind of shocked because I kind of... You know, we kind of went over the past couple years. We had a movie about Queen, a movie about Elton John, a movie inspired by the Beatles, or the music of the Beatles, a movie inspired by the music of Bruce Springsteen, right? And I kind of thought, oh, now Judy Garland, and I felt like it should inspire me, kind of take me away. Maybe, like, the music would be really something. I don't know. The trailers for the movie, you know, I had that big, like, Judy and the red sparkles, like the Wizard of Oz, like Dorothy slippers. And that to me just promised more because there was nothing like over the top about this movie. It was just kind of reminded me like this movie could have maybe been made like in the 90s, kind of thing. But yeah, like it just, I'm going to say skip. So yeah.
Skip it. Spoilers.
Spoilers. I don't know what we could spoil.
Let me tell you.
Because we know the life of Judy Garland.
Let me tell you what's problematic about the movie. And I'm talking to you, movie makers. So Judy Garland's whole life was filled with trauma and dysfunction. And one of the main aspects that kept Judy Garland in this situation was called secret keeping. Mm-hmm. And it's common in dysfunctional situations like addiction especially. And so what I saw in this movie was that this movie wanted to give us a look at this person's life and the difficulties in her life, but at the same time, continue to participate in the very things that probably cut her life very short. And I'm talking specifically about the end of the movie, where it just said that she died a couple weeks later or whatever, and that or 6 months later, she was 47 years old. She didn't just die, she overdosed on barbiturates. And I think that, like, by not putting in that movie and all the other things in the movie that were kind of similar, I think it does a disservice because that's just the truth. You can present somebody's life and honor that person and show the truth of a person's life, but when you participate in dysfunctional secret keeping, like this is common knowledge about how she died. Why at the end of this movie, when I have this thing up on the screen at the end, it doesn't tell me that because, of course, at the end of the movie, we're like, well, she probably overdosed, right? It's probably from how she lived her life. And yet it refused to give us that information. And I find that problematic.
Yeah, and I think that that's something that you tend to see where if somebody dies of cancer or a heart attack, that there's not any inclination to withhold that information. But when somebody dies of addiction, maybe taking their own life, that there's a tendency to just not like talk about that.
Hide it, but
like, I think it like speaks to a common thing that happens where it's like, well, we don't air our dirty laundry. We don't like. It's not like okay to talk about this stuff. We'll keep this hush hush.
I just think it's important. We had this movie that showed her life and showed how she was abused by the studio and basically coerced into being a drug addict when she was a child, which is awful. And then you saw
crazy.
You see the scars of that because obviously she's still a drug addict. But
the whole movie could have been about MGM and what they did.
Her whole life then became that. And we know about addiction in our family. Like So this is why it's a hot button issue. Her whole life became about people kind of doing stuff for her. Like it's a super dysfunctional mess her life was, and that is not an effective way to live. And we have evidence that shows that this is how those things end. But this movie, it simultaneously wanted to give us a version of the truth, like be true with details, but at the same time, like kind of prop her up a little bit. I thought that like, and she's a human person, and everybody's life has value, and people with addiction have a disease. I just think that it's important that it went too far, and I don't know. There's something about this movie that it didn't make me. Being around people that have addiction problems often, and being in recovery, around people in recovery, the kind of things that I saw in this movie are things that hurt recovery rather than help. And it's those kind of things like secret keeping. It wanted to show, they wanted to show kind of how she got to where she was by showing us the flashbacks. But in a way, the movie presented it in a way which almost took responsibility off herself. From overcoming things, and I think that like it's important for people who have the disease of addiction like me to recognize how they got there and be truthful and honest about it, but simultaneously I think it's important for people to recognize their own responsibility in it.
Right, because if you don't, what you're essentially saying
just, yeah.
is because of what happened to Judy Garland as a child, this is how her life turned out, and then she died. Right. And oops, nothing can be done about it. Like, that's just the way it goes for people in that situation. Where, like, that's not, like, actually, like, the truth.
That's harmful, in fact. I think the idea of that is harmful because that gives a person with addiction, with trauma in their past, it gives them a hope, oh, I can't overcome this because of what happened to me when I was a kid. That's not true. It's going to be difficult, and you shouldn't, it's not as if you don't recognize what happened in the past, but like there's a responsibility in it that I think is key, and I think that it's important to give people with the disease of addiction and any other kind of dysfunction like that in their lives the truth that you're never ever really in a hopeless situation because you can always take responsibility.
The future's not written, and so
tell us about Adlerian psychology, Rachel. I think it applies here.
Well, I don't know what you want me to say.
Well, just about this would... So one of the things in Adlerian psychology, which Rachel has studied up on, guys, is that what happened in the past doesn't determine your future.
Right. Because that's determinism, and so, like, that's not it's not a fun or peaceful or joyful way to live. Like, you know, A happened, so now B happens, and that's it. There's nothing else you can do about that. I don't know, like, how the movie makers, like, what they could have done different in the movie because it is Judy Garland's life, and if this is how it unfolded, this is how it unfolded. Some people, like, hit a rock bottom where they're not living with their kids anymore, and it's what causes them to turn their life around. Yeah. It doesn't seem like, from this movie, it's like that's not what happened with Judy Garland.
Yeah.
I don't know how you tell her story and remain truthful while also, like, I don't know, espousing, like, the truths of recovery. Like, I get, like, it's a difficult
Maybe
thing.
It's my pet peeve. Beyond my pet peeve of this movie, the movie just wasn't very good.
Yeah, it was
the music
slow,
was pretty poor.
The score was,
I thought Renée Zellweger's
uninspiring.
Performance was pretty uninspiring. I could see that she very much gave an effort to do this kind of role. I just don't think she quite got it. It was like I saw Renée Zellweger trying to play a character rather than her becoming that person.
Yeah, it was for me
weird.
Like it seemed like a movie that could have been made like a long time ago, maybe, and past a beat would be like, oh, this is a good movie, but yeah, it just wasn't very good.
The worst part about it for me personally is that the moment I saw the first trailer, I knew this movie's not going to be good. But
we
you know,
saw it because it's
got good
reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, so we're like, well, we'll go give it a chance.
It must just be the trailer.
Right, because trailers are made by different people than the movie makers, and so, in most cases, and yeah, it just wasn't very good.
Yeah. You know what is really good, though?
Is it Rachelsey at the movies?
Rachelsey at the movies has taken the world by storm. Every day at least, once every few weeks at least, in a day, I'll see somebody else subscribe. And we're so happy about that. So thanks for liking, commenting, and subscribing. We'll keep going to the movies. We can't take you with us. That's right. We can't take you with us. It's just too complicated. So
but
we'll
we do
go,
in our hearts.
Yeah, we do in our hearts. And then we'll come back and talk to you about the movie we saw. And we can just do it that way, okay?